Welcome to our 12th edition of Community Talks. Today we are continuing on the topic of resiliency with focus on human health. March is the month of multiple sclerosis awareness. And today, specifically, we are going to discuss the topic of MS. Our guest today is Sara Al-Meheri. Sara Al-Meheri comes with a wealth of information and a wealth of knowledge to share with us today to raise awareness on the topic. Today, we are not giving a medical advice, but rather sharing information and spreading awareness on MS. What is MS? What are the symptoms? And how we as individuals can support the MS community. Welcome, Sara Al-Meheri, to our edition today.
Thank you. We're honored to be here today. So, multiple sclerosis, or in Arabic التصلب المتعدد, أو locally we know it as التصلب الواحي, is a chronic condition. So it affects the central nervous system of the human body. And basically, what happens is that it disrupts the flow of information between the brain and the body. The best way I like to explain it, especially when I'm with students, is, do you guys remember the sort of headphones, the cord ones, not the wireless ones?
Right.
So if we consider that to be the central nervous system, that cord, the wires inside are our nerves, and they're protected by a layer of fat called the myelin sheath. So if we think of the rubber coating around the wires as the myelin sheath, that would be sort of our central nervous system, right? And I have cats at home, right? And they like to chew on wires. So when a cat chews on the wire and chews on the cord and exposes the wire, what happens to our headphones? We can't listen to a podcast, right? We can't watch YouTube videos. There's a bit of delay, a disruption in information flow. So let's think of the cat as much as we can as the immune system, trying to protect their favorite human. But what happens is that the immune system, or the cat, attacks the myelin sheath, and therefore causing erosion within that protective layer and exposing the wires or the nerves. And depending on where this happens in the region of the brain, it can come up into different symptoms. And multiple sclerosis basically means multiple scars. So what happens is that over time, there are scarring of the tissue, and you can see it on an MRI as well. And that's how basically MS is diagnosed, that they have to go through an MRI machine, and it will show where all the lesions are.
Interesting. So it is a neurological condition.
It's a neurological condition, yes.
While I was preparing for this episode, I watched a lot of stories, and there is one thing in common about all the stories, which is the importance of stress support and stress relief, and this normally comes from a community and support by a group of supporters, can be friends, can be a community. So I understand this is the spirit of and the main focus of the NMSS. Can you tell us more about your organization and what are your goals?
Yeah, and definitely, what's really interesting is that we're very lucky to be in a country like the UAE that supports these type of initiatives. And for us at the National Multiple Sclerosis Society, we were founded in 2022 with the main goal of enhancing the lives of people living with MS. And the MS community in general, actually. So it's not just people diagnosed with MS, but it's their friends and families, caregivers, even the medical community. So what we do is, we work on three main principles, or three main pillars. The first is research, driving research and advancement of treatments of MS. And with that, we have a few key initiatives. So one of them is the research grant cycle. And with that, the National MS Society funds incredible, very cutting-edge research here in the UAE, in hopes to advance treatments and diagnosis of MS. Another really great initiative is the MS treatment guidelines that was launched here in the UAE, and specifically for the UAE. So a treatment guideline is basically a list of protocols on how to treat MS. This was kind of a culmination of different international best practices and standards, but putting it in the local context of the UAE. So it's an incredible resource so that we can support, so that we can have medical support for people with MS.
Wow, that's amazing. So you're focused on the community building aspects and support for people with MS,
Yeah.
and also the research.
Yeah.
So
So
you're
that's one
spearheading-
part of it, right? We also have two other pillars. The second one is providing resource and support, like you mentioned, right? We want to give support for the community. We want to give them resources. We actually recently launched the MS helpline. So this was in collaboration with M42. And what it is a national dedicated helpline for people with MS. And actually not just people with MS, it's for the MS community. So people can call in if they have any information or any questions, they need any information about MS. And they, for example, would like to know the nearest neurologist so that they can make an appointment. They can access that through the helpline. I think another really important service of the MS helpline is that it also offers mental health support, right? I think that's really important. You mentioned stress,
Yeah.
right? Alleviating stress. This is one way for us to do it. And I think, what I've heard from the MS community is that they feel a lot safer knowing that there's something to fall on with the MS helpline and with the National MS Society. I mean, that's one initiative within resources and support. Another one is digital guides. So, especially after COVID, sometimes in-person information is a lot harder to get from nutritionists and mental health providers. So what the National MS Society did is launch online resources, so digital resources that are available on our website. Currently, we have this guides for nutrition, mental health, and how to break the news to your kids. And not only people with MS or the MS community can benefit from it, actually, it's also other people with similar chronic conditions. It's really interactive, it's very informative. We worked with so many partners and experts to create them, and inshallah we'll have more coming soon. What else? We also have launched the art apprenticeship program. Okay. So this is really interesting. What does MS have to do with art? But we actually found that through art, we're able to raise more awareness. So what we did is, in collaboration with Darwaza Curatorial Lab, they're a local curation agency, and we were able to send out a call for people to apply. So people with MS and similar conditions. We chose 4 participants, and they went through a few weeks of learning the curatorial practices. And basically what that is using art to tell a story.
Wow.
So that's one really amazing, initiative that we have. And of course, we have raising awareness of MS and trying to reduce social stigma. So we go into universities, we participate in communities. We also have Eldar participating in Move for MS. That's another way of raising awareness. So yeah, so many more initiatives, but we can talk about it later.
That's magnificent effort. So thank you for that, and congratulations on this whole program. This is really special and unique, and we're now used to having very special offerings always from the leadership here.
Yes.
Research is very important. We are dealing with the invisible condition.
Yeah.
So having more research, understand and treat it, that would be great. Can you give us more data about the number of people globally and UAE who are having the MS condition?
Yeah, so, globally what we know so far is that 2.9 million people are affected by MS. The global average age of diagnosis is 32 years old. Okay. Now, when it comes to the UAE, out of every 100,000 people, 19 individuals are affected by MS. Okay. And they're usually diagnosed between the ages of 20 to 40. So you can imagine that hits sort of the most kind of productive years of our lives. It's when we are at university deciding on a major or graduating and starting our careers, or even, thinking of starting families. Yeah. Because of that, I think it's really important to know each other within the community to support, because there's also a lot of misinformation out there, right? And I think it's really important for us to, invite people to kind of support each other with their experience. Another thing is that MS affects women twice as much as men. So statistically in the UAE, 67% of people diagnosed with MS are women, while 33% are men. And right now, there are more diagnoses every year. It's increasing, and they're getting diagnosed at a much earlier age. Now, I know that sometimes people have a cause for concern whenever I say that, but I say that with hopefulness, because when you get diagnosed earlier, it means you can get on a treatment plan. You know what it is that you have. You have answers to questions with all the different symptoms, and we can talk about that later as well. All the different symptoms that you're feeling. So yeah, it's really important for us to shed light on that.
You touched base on a very important topic, which is MS symptoms may be mixed with other neurological conditions. So can you give us the most common symptoms?
Yeah, and actually before I answer that, I don't think I mentioned that people with MS are also considered people of determination because of the symptoms, the varying symptoms, and how it can affect their lives. So, and I'm going to break it into two different categories of symptoms. Yeah. This is how I like to think things through. So you have symptoms that are very visible, right? When you see them, you definitely know that someone is going through them. That could be something like muscle weakness. They'll have difficulty lifting a cup of coffee, right? Or their limbs sometimes don't have the full range of motion. It can affect their gait, the way they walk. So because of that, they would possibly need mobility aids like a cane or a walker or even a wheelchair. So, and then the other part of it, which is what the majority of people with MS experience, is invisible symptoms. And I think here there's also a layer of difficulty in trying to, share that they have MS. So one symptom that the majority of people, I think around 80% of people experience, is vision impairment. So, it can affect their vision in several different ways, actually. Even with that, there's different types. So imagine you're, in a classroom and suddenly you're seeing double vision. A lot of times people with MS, especially when they're students, right? Or when they're working hard, they say, okay, I'm just looking at the computer for too long. And they would ignore it. Right. But then the differences with this type of symptom, or with MS specifically, is that the symptoms last longer. So you'll have double vision for a while. If, for me, I would have double vision for a while, or things will be blurry. But for a person with MS, it will last 3 days, a week, until they're able to get it treated, of course. I think another one that I want to shed light on is fatigue. Especially now with Ramadan, or fasting, we're working, studying. We feel fatigue often. But our fatigue is very different to people with MS. Their fatigue, no matter how much rest they get, no matter how much sleep they get, they're still tired. It's different. So even, this is what I hear from people with MS through my work, is that, Sarah, you won't believe that when I say I'm tired, everyone's like, hey, yeah, I'm tired too. It's Ramadan. It's very dismissive as well, right? So yeah, those are some of the symptoms that can affect the life of a person living with MS.
Right. So it impacts daily life. I'd like to share, a story of two of my best friends. Very active, very athletic. They eat healthy, going by the rules of nutrition and mental health. and all of a sudden, I hear that they have MS. And you're right, one of them was going to work and continued life as normal. And if she wouldn't mention it, like no one would notice. But the other one was completely on, deteriorated into a wheelchair, state. So what is currently, I know we don't have like 100% cure, but what is currently the treatment for these conditions? Or is it only a matter of slowing down symptoms?
Honestly, it's different. It's both actually. And I'm not a medical professional, so I can't. My medical experience is through Grey's Anatomy, so it's not enough to speak on behalf of a doctor.
Yeah.
But there are so many different treatments. Medicine has advanced so much in just the last few years. So there are different options for people with MS. The most important thing is that, no two people with MS have the same symptoms, the same experiences. So it's really important for them to go see their doctor for any treatment plan. But what really helps sort of manage the symptoms is having a healthier lifestyle, which is what the National MS Society also promotes, right? So I told you we have nutrition guides on our website, and it's to promote healthy living. And I think that's not just for everyone, it's for us as well, right? It's not just for people with MS, it's for everyone. But also it's really important to emphasize other types of care that you can get from a hospital. Physiotherapy, occupational therapy. Our MS ambassadors put so much emphasis on mental health, right? I think, alhamdulillah, now it's, people are more open to seeking mental health and mental support, but they're really pushing for that for people with MS as well. You're not alone. There are other people who can help you and can support you in your journey, It's really amazing to be in this community because it's all about empowerment.
So there is a big impact of your work on the society. If you can just give us one example of a person with MS and how an MSS supported, just to get perspective on the support you give to the community.
Honestly, I think it really goes both ways. So, they support us and we support them. I think, I've mentioned so many different aspects of the initiatives that we have. But if I would say the MS helpline can really help people that might not have access to the society, or they message us on Instagram or email us, but we haven't met because, as much as we try to work across the UAE, we're still a small team, so we try to, as much as we can, reach other people. But I think if I want to mention, it's hard to mention just one story, but let me just say about the art apprenticeship.
Okay.
I think, people who participated in that, especially two of them who don't have any background in art, for them, Abu Dhabi art was as much as art as they were able to get close to art. So for them, it really empowered them to tell their story. And they were able to see that, throughout their journey in the program, they saw people support them.
Beautiful.
And support their story and support in telling their story. And I think most importantly, because we have this sort of symbiotic relationship with the MS community and ourselves, they definitely raised awareness of what they're experiencing. I know myself, I thought, I'm a very inclusive person, but there's still a lot more to learn. And they do a wonderful job at that. And what we do as well is amplify their stories for the wider community.
That's really nice. Our the title of our podcast is Community Talk. So we like to be involved more. So how can we as a community support as well?
Oh, there's definitely different ways to get involved. I think, we do have volunteers that support the society in different events and different initiatives. Part of those volunteers are people with MS, right? Our MS ambassadors. But then you have people who are students or they just want to give back. So, that link and that information is available in our website. But another way is to, now that people have heard about MS, share it. Share what you've learned with people around you at the dinner table. It's one way of becoming an advocate for inclusion, right? And another way I've mentioned some individual ways people can get involved, but on an organizational level, something like what Eldar is doing is participating in Move for MS, right? So this is an awareness campaign, and people and corporations can get involved in raising awareness within their communities, within their organization. And of course, the National MS Society is always happy to collaborate on different programs and initiatives. I give the example of art, right? Yeah. How can we collaborate there? But there's always a way to collaborate with NGOs like ours.
Thank you. So I think this is very inspiring for each one of us, and it's always like we call it a selfish act of giving. Like it feels good, and it comes with our DNA. Like I'm sure everyone here will get out checking your website and try and play a role in your society. Now. Before we get to the audience to ask questions, how is this impacting you as Sarah?
Me as Sarah. Oh, well, yeah, honestly, let me start with before I joined NMSS. I'm lucky enough that throughout my career, I always worked with different communities, even people of determination. And I always thought that I see through an inclusive lens. And I had an idea of what MS was before joining, but it really opened my eyes to really how people are affected by so many things that you can't see, right? Not just people with MS, but everyone in general. And it's incredible to see the resilience of people with MS, right? Like, this is what I hear all the times. Like, yeah, well, I think, I was chosen because I was strong enough to take on MS. Or, you know what, I've had MS for so long, it became my best friend. So it's really amazing to see their positivity and to hear the stories from the MS community. I think most importantly, I definitely see through a more inclusive lens than I did before. So another thing that affects people with MS is heat, either extreme heat or extreme cold.
Yeah.
So they need to sit down a lot more. They need to rest a lot more. And I can see that pocket of rest for them within public spaces, which is incredible to see more and more of in the UAE, and the UAE supports that a lot. And I always see the people I know, like a mother with MS, being able to rest a little bit with her kids and then continuing on their, Friday night activities. So it's really important to think inclusively.
That's a beautiful thought as well. Like within our development, we're very conscious about POD.
Yeah, it's incredible to see, to be honest. Yeah.
Yeah, and just having the idea of adding more chairs that will bring a different perspective on how we design and build and finish, the final touches, not just about the look, the functionality. Yeah. So that's a good perspective. Thanks for bringing this
even
up.
in Yas Mall, I don't know if you noticed, but there
in
are...
Yas Mall, there's every few meters, there is like a resting area.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So thank you again, Sarah. The hope and the attitude and being able to relieve any anxiety with the power of community is the message, I think, mainly today.
Yeah, definitely.
So thank you for being with us on the Steppy app and the community support. I think this morning we reached around 5.5 million steps, and we're still ongoing until the end of the month.
Amazing, mashallah.
So we need everybody's steps. Just make sure you download the app and you join us for this move. If anyone have questions from the audience before we go to the online session, we're taking questions now.
Thank you very much for your enlightening discussion. It was very articulate, and I definitely learned something. You've mentioned that the condition happens from the age of 20 onwards.
That's usually the sort of average age of diagnosis. There are those who are diagnosed as children, so, but it's very, very rare.
I was just going to ask, was there anything that, do we have any study that suggests it doesn't happen post that age or to a younger children? But you've said it's obviously not as rare, as common, you mean?
Yeah, it's not as common, and there is a lot of research happening for MS, not just for treatment and a cure, but also for diagnosis. So that's why we're pushing for more of that as well within the region. Now, I think something that's really important is that I've only mentioned a very few types of symptoms that people with MS experience, but there's a variety of them, and they can be mistaken for other things, right? When it comes to diagnosis, as long as you don't ignore something that, a symptom that you're feeling, and you get it checked, whether it's MS or anything else actually, you get diagnosed a lot earlier, which is the mindset of a lot of people around the world now, right? Not many people choose to ignore certain symptoms. Even if they do, they have friends and family who tell them not to ignore, push them to get it checked. But no, alhamdulillah, there's the age of, like I said, the age of diagnosis is getting younger and younger. So that's a hopeful thing.
Okay, thank you. And then just one last one. You've mentioned that the symptoms double in women. Is the study looking to, if there's a connection between the genders? Is there something to suggest that it's more women than men, or?
Yeah, so there is studies and research ongoing to see if there's a hormonal connection. That's why we're pushing for more research, especially in the region, actually. Previously, like 10 plus years ago, MS was thought worldwide to be a condition that only affects people of European descent. But what we've learned from research around the world is that that's not the case. Ethnicity has nothing to do with it. And there are so many other people diagnosed around the world. So yeah, I think it's really important for us to push for more research. I think something that also I need to say that MS is not contagious. I know no one has asked that, but just in case someone's thinking that. And it's not hereditary. So it's not hereditary the way eye color is or hair color. So for example, if I have MS and I'm pregnant, I can't pass it on. But there could be a genetic component that plays a role. So there are people, so for someone with MS, their cousins or uncles or daughters could be at a higher risk of getting diagnosed. But yeah, there's more research ongoing, and hopefully we get an answer to that soon.
Any other questions from the audience?
Thank you, Sarah, for your time today. It's very insightful. From what I learned today, it's a very complicated disease to diagnose. So I just wanted to ask if there are any common signs that if I see in a person, then I can know that this is enough for me to go take them to a neurologist, مثلا.
Yeah, so, if someone experienced any symptoms that could be MS, like impairment in vision, like I said, fatigue, some things that I didn't touch on is brain fog, numbness and tingling sensation, constant pain, right? But think about it. If the symptom lasts more than 24 or 48 hours, then there's definitely something that needs to be checked, right? People with MS experience vision impairment, fatigue, pain, numbness, but it doesn't go away, right? I experience numbness in my legs whenever I'm sat at my computer for too long, which is not a great habit to have, I know. But I get up, move around, and it's gone, right? If a symptom persists, then they'll have to seek medical attention for sure. And this is not just with the possibility of it being MS. This is any symptom that you might face.
Now I'm going to ask another question. Are the symptoms progressive? It gets worse with time, or is it going to be like constantly the same?
Well, there are no two people with MS who experience the same symptoms and the same progression. But also it's important to note that there are 4 different types of MS. I know I didn't get into it, but I didn't want to play the role of doctor today. but you have a clinically isolated syndrome where the symptom of MS can happen once, right? There's no other trend of symptoms going on. This could be a precursor, but it's not a definite diagnosis of MS. The most common type of MS is relapsing remitting. So with this one, you would have, a relapse or an attack followed by partial or full recovery. And it happens from time to time, right? Then you have secondary progressive, where you would have lesser attacks, but there is an increasing of worsening of the symptoms.
Severity.
The last one is primary progressive, which is just from the onset of diagnosis, there's a steady decline. So those are 4 different types. But again, treatment, having a healthy lifestyle, taking care of yourself, getting to know your condition, having MS be your best friend, you get to know and manage your symptoms better. And alhamdulillah, in the UAE, there are medical experts, neurologists, nurses, physiotherapists that specialize in MS, and you can definitely get the support that you need.
Nice. I would like to make one more comment on having a healthy lifestyle. So nutrition, mental health are key. How about going to the gym, since this is a neurological condition rather than muscle? So
no, it affects the
people with
muscles.
MS can continue to
they can, of course.
strengthen exercise. And
they definitely can. And I've heard from a person with MS that 10 years ago, one of her doctors told her, maybe you shouldn't work out as much. Thankfully, she didn't listen.
Good.
And she continued exercising. You can definitely continue exercising, being active, which is also why we have the Move for MS, right? And inspiring people to stay active while raising awareness of MS. But yeah, people with MS should stay active, even if it's just walking, right? Movement in general is really important. And yeah, there shouldn't be any problems with exercising. And, if someone's worried about going to the gym and not having, the right equipment for them, if they're on a wheelchair or if they use a cane, they can definitely find, just let them know that, I have MS. We just need to fix our workouts to fit my condition, and they can go from there.
Thank you so much, Sarah,
Thank you.
for all the effort that you're putting, you and NMS Society. And hopefully a cure will be found soon.
Inshallah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone for coming today, and really appreciate it. Now it's our role to spread the word and awareness.
And keep walking.
Yes, yes, exactly. Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care. Thanks everyone.